Today's topic is how to get unstuck and move forward, specifically how it relates to diet and getting your nutrition in check, maybe losing weight, but you can apply this information to all aspects of your life. And today I have a specialist to talk about this. His name is Lew Epstein. He is a psychotherapist who has been in practice for over 40 years. His specialty is family and marriage counseling. And he has a wonderful book you definitely want to check out. And I'll put the link to that below. It's called Coaching for Fatherhood. So, Lew, how do we get unstuck and move forward?
Well, thank you for that introduction, Nina. And yeah, I think we're talking about overcoming the blocks that people have, we have. It's kind of like a guide for everyone, because it could be for providers of healthcare, or it could be anything from acupuncturists to physical trainers to physical therapists, because people get stuck and they get stuck with people they're trying to help. So it's kind of universal. And this is the guide, or a helpful guide, I hope, to finding ways to get yourself out of the stuckness that we all feel at times. Now, the first part of that, I'm going to use an example of a client. And it's someone, and this, we're going to stick in many ways to health, but we'll go to other dimensions of values and where people need and want to change. But I'm going to start with Joseph. He's a 35-year-old man, and he's really, by all standards, obese. He weighs over 300 pounds, and he's come for help. But as I said, I think the first area we have to look at is, where is Joseph stuck? So in my first conversation with Joseph, he says that he wants to lose weight, but he also loses focus. And he says things like, when I feel a little down, a little anxious, when something isn't going well with someone, that's when I lose focus. And as I explored further, is, well, when else does it happen that you seem to lose track of where you want to be? Well, he says, when I feel lonely. And I said, well, what do you do when you feel lonely? I binge. And, you know, I also get to looking at, well, what's going on in your mind at those times? And what he said to me was that I sometimes find myself ruminating. In other words, thoughts going over and over in his mind. And I said, well, what do you say to yourself? He said, I say to myself, Joseph, you're such a loser. And then also, he said that when he feels anxious, I eat to calm myself. So you can see that even though Joseph wants to lose weight, is concerned about his appearance, you can see from his behaviors and his thinking and his feelings that he's stuck. And I believe that until we kind of unlock or work with the stuckness, Joseph is going to have a lot of trouble changing or sticking to what seems to be his goal. Because remember, he's had goals before, but he hasn't been able to achieve them. And I'm suggesting that the stuckness is important. So I know I spoke before about this, but I'm going to review this again. It's the issue of values. And values are different than goals. Values are like your compass in life, like what gives it meaning. And when somebody has a value about something, it's something that you never achieve. You just keep along the road or the path of that value. And I'm going to hold up a little chart of values, and that might explain the domains or the areas that people sometimes need to develop. In the case of Joseph, it's obviously health and self-improvement. But it doesn't always have to be that, because the thing about stuckness is that it can happen anywhere. So let me hold that up first.
Now, did you create this chart?
No, actually, well, I use this chart, but this is a flip chart that I use with clients. It's actually put together by a very well-known acceptance and commitment therapist named Sears. I wouldn't expect a layperson to necessarily buy this chart. It's like a flip chart for therapists mostly, but you know, it can be helpful. And what I do is I often take handouts. I will copy these sections and give them out as kind of assignments in a way. So tell me if you can see this well, or see that somewhat, what this chart has on it. Is that visible?
Yeah, I could see a couple of the words. It says marriage, intimate relations, parenting, friendships. Move it over to my left a little bit, which is probably your right. Yeah, and I can see the columns. Yeah, spirituality's on there. Yes, I see it.
Yeah, so what I would do, Nina, is I would ask clients to consider what they value in each of the following areas. Ideally, I would ask them to be specific, such as listing what kind of hobbies or activities they like to do under recreation, for example. Then I have them rate how important each area is to them on a scale of 1 to 10, with one being the, I'm sorry.
You could probably put it down because
Okay,
now
yeah.
it's kind of the reason why it's muffling your voice.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, it goes into family relations and marriage and intimate relations, parenting, friendship, career, education, recreation, spirituality, citizenship or environment, and health and physical well-being, which is a lot I know where your work is, and some of mine is also. So what we're trying to get to with clients or people that we work with, and I'm saying this is fairly universal, is to get that value to be articulated, to be spoken, to be kind of put in the forefront. And what we're trying to arrive at is a mission statement of some kind. Mission meaning that this is more important than just one goal. This is something that matters to you in life, and that once you elevate to that status, it gives it more oomph, or it gives it more weight in a good way. So mission statements and refining values is so important for all of us, but especially when we work with people in any helping profession. Now, eventually what we want to get to, we do want to get to goals. And we do want to get to goals that are more specific, but that's only after someone is a little bit less stuck, that they have a sense, a deeper sense of what they value. So I'm going to go to goals now, and I'm going to hold up one more chart, and I won't hold, I'll just hold it up for a little while because it's not, every part of it will not be developed that well, but let me just put out the thing about goals. And tell me if you can see this at all.
Yes, I can see it. It's not terribly clear, but yeah, I can see the chart.
Okay, and as I'm just going to say that the things that we want, as far as the acronym is SMART goals, which means that the goal is specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's timely. And that's the part of the goals that we want to create with people. In this chart, there are long-term goals, medium goals, short-term goals, but that formula of specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely is a good, the SMART way of approaching goals is good for each of us, and it's good when we're working with people. Now, the other place that people get stuck, and we can certainly say with Joseph, my client is in their thoughts, their feelings, and their sensations. Well, what does that mean to be stuck in your thoughts? Well, let me go back to what he had said. So Joseph said that I tend to lose focus when I feel something isn't right in my relationships. When I'm lonely, I binge. I tend to ruminate, and I say to myself, you're such a loser. I eat to calm myself. So can you see how Joseph gets lost in his thoughts, his feelings, and his sensations? What we're trying to do and work with people around is to understand the relationship between their thoughts and memories, their emotions, and their body sensations. I'm going to show up another kind of chart around this, or another.
And it seems like a lot of people they only use, or the majority of the things, they use food to soothe themselves. It's their crutch. And they always go toward the food instead of other activities that are not harmful.
Yes. Well, food is, if you think about food, it's omnipresent. We're surrounded in a world of food, like other things that people could get addicted to or have problems with. They're not so present. You don't have necessarily, if someone is addicted to a substance, well, that substance isn't always available. If it's a substance like marijuana, even, I mean, it could be available if you buy it, but the idea that food is something that we need every day, or unless we're fasting, and that it's a tricky area because it blends so easily into other parts of life. So the idea of trying to be self-disciplined and watching your motivations around food, it's really a challenge for many because it ties right in to our basic needs, our hunger, our drives. So yes, I could see how food is one of the more challenging areas around thoughts, feelings, and sensations and how they interact. Now, the thing with thoughts, feelings, and sensations is that there's a negative feedback loop, which I'm going to hold up, and there's a positive feedback loop. And okay, so let me. Okay, can you see the top part of this now, Nina?
I would, well, I see, let's see, distressing event or series problems arises. I see part of it. Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
okay.
back it up a little bit so we can see the whole thing. Move it to the
How's
side.
that?
You're right. The other side. Yeah. Okay. Now we can see the diagram.
Great, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you've ever been stuck, or let's look at Joseph, stuck in a loop with your stress or anxiety or depression or thinking, it can be useful to break down your experiences into 3 levels: thoughts, emotions, and body sensations. When you get caught in a negative feedback loop, each of these 3 levels can keep the distress going. For example, when you're struggling with your thoughts, your emotional distress will rise. When your distress rises, your body will experience muscle tension, sometimes a pounding heart, headaches possibly. Now, those body sensations will create more distress, and more distress will increase distressing thoughts. So can you see the negative feedback loop?
Yep.
So that's the way people get stuck, getting back to stuckness in the negative loop. Now I'm going to raise this. Okay, you see how that can work?
Yeah, and I can see how you when you're eating, you stop the loop and you concentrate on something else, which is the yummy food.
Yes.
So I could see that.
Yes, so the sensation then takes away the thought, but only temporarily.
Right.
Because without what we talked about earlier, without the values and the mission, and we'll get to the choice points, which I've talked before about, that's where you get stuck again, because you can just ride with a sensation and just go with it. And if you stay with it, and the sensation governs your behavior, then you're stuck again. And I think that's where, let me give the positive feedback loop. So I'm going to hold this up again.
Oh, good.
There's another part of that. Can you see the bottom part of that, the other chart?
If you could tilt it down and then away a little bit from us. Yeah, I could see the, yeah, and over to the side. Okay, and then, okay, body sensations, emotions, goes back and forth. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so it says here, if you can step back, and this is the key, stepping back from your thoughts, rather than getting lost in them, your emotions will calm down and your body will stop reacting. If you can give yourself permission to feel your emotions rather than fighting with them, your thinking will be less compulsive and your body less tense. Finally, if you can relate to your own body sensations with kindness, your emotions and thoughts are more likely to settle. So, those are the two different feedback loops that we can, one can get stuck in the negative feedback loop, but can we, if someone can look at and see the positive feedback loop, only changing one element of them can change the system. Like if you can observe your thoughts, if you can compassionately look at your feelings without necessarily having to act on them, if you can accept your sensations, that's a positive framework for not getting stuck. So what are we talking about? We're actually talking about awareness and mindfulness in the moment. And that's a lot of what helps people to get unstuck. They have to be aware right in that moment, and they have to be connected to themselves and do those functions of observing their thoughts rather than just following a thought. We can call it floating with a thought, observing, seeing where the thought is taking us, but not necessarily taking a ride on the thought. If you know what I mean, all of us can get stuck on a thought and then go all the way into catastrophe. And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if this? Well, that's fairly universal unless we're aware. We can notice it, observe it, and step back from it, and even compassionately say, oh, there's my mind doing what it does. Because the mind will do that. And I'm going to say the normal, healthy mind will do that. So this is not a thing we want to pathologize and say, oh, look how stuck that person is, because any one of us, given the right situation or a difficult moment, can get stuck in a thought or a sensation or a feeling. And the more awareness we bring to our lives, the greater the capacity to get unstuck and to move forward with our most cherished goals. But I just want to present the stuckness as not an aberration, but as a norm. So that's an important element of this, that we're not saying that it's not like I never get stuck just because I do this work. Of course I get stuck at times. Hopefully it doesn't last that long because I'm bringing a greater awareness to some of these elements.
So I think of it as like the devil and the angel. The devil's on one shoulder and the angel's on the other. And you can either let that devil take over and make you go crazy, or you can just acknowledge, all right, you're a little bit right, but let's do the positive. Let's listen to what the angel has to say.
Sure. No, I understand what you're saying. And there's a lot to what you're saying, because many of us carry that within us, like the angel devil, or even something that somebody's called the dictator within, or the inner critic, which is used a lot in psychology. And the inner critic is some part of us that can be hard on ourselves. And a lot of this is not about being hard on yourself. It's actually being compassionate even when you slip. Because if you're hard on yourself, I mean, I could say as a therapist and a psychotherapist for so many years, there's no value in beating ourselves up emotionally. All it does is bring down mood. And a lot of people who suffer from depression have a very harsh inner critic. So what we don't want to get stuck in the idea that there's a part of us that's bad. So I want to challenge a little bit the angel devil and say that maybe all parts of us need to be accepted and observed for what they are. You know, okay, so there's a part of me that can be, let's say, a little more compulsive. But I want to accept that too, not act out on it, but allow it in and say, that's a part of me. And it's been around a long time. Because a lot of work in psychology goes back to parts of us that were formed when we were very young. And well, we can't really get rid of them. It won't work. So we have to kind of live with them, but negotiate in a certain way and allow them in and put our higher self in charge, you could say. Somebody said, if I have a very childish part within me that wants to eat all the chocolate in the house, I have to like tell my inner child, can you get your greasy hands off the steering wheel? I'm in charge. So, there's usually a higher self or some adult self that has a little more wisdom. And I think that's what we're always trying to cultivate when we're talking about health and habit formation, because I would say I would go more into inner child or a child within that seems to have a more acting out or impulsive way of dealing with life. And that's what a lot, that's what we're gonna say, Nina?
I do like that. Like what would your adult self say? The child you is like, I want my cookies and I want them now. The little temper tantrum and they have their cookies.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, the inner child and the whole idea that we all carry that child, but the child is never going to go away entirely. See, because the child is there within us. And I think the child needs an adult meaning a part of us that's the adult self that doesn't condemn the child, respects the idea that there'll always be a childish, even playful part of ourselves, which is fine at times, and that the adult is in good control without denying the existence of the child, which represents impulses. And, a child will do whatever feels good in the moment. But the adult self, if we use that model, knows that won't work. So what do you say to the child? You say, well, I know you're having a difficult day. You have very strong urges to eat something now. And now we're going to do something else at this time. You don't have to scold the child.
Do you negotiate with a child, or you tell the child, I'm the adult and I'm telling you what to do?
Well, I think the child can be respected in the idea that it has a part in life because that's the playful part of us. But no, I think the adult, without being harsh, needs to talk to the child in a way as you would with the child. You're setting limits, but you're not yelling at the child. That eventually the child will tune you out. And I think that's true with parts of ourselves.
Yeah. So, there's some people that say moderation is key. And then there's another part of, the society, plant-based society says moderation is not key. And that's the reason why, people can't control the amount of food they're eating, because one little bit will set them over. And little bits add up over time, and that's why they can't lose weight.
That could be one aspect of it, yes. Well, I think the thing about moderation, I would say in adult thinking, what you're trying to get to is nuance, which is that it's not extreme. The child and the more extreme part of us think in black or white. And as a therapist, when I'm working with people who are more in midlife, the expectation would be, and the work is towards, can we get a little more shades of gray here? Can we get a little more nuanced? So whenever we're operating in the extreme and the intensity is building, it's often a childlike part of us that is kind of taken over. So yes, you can almost tell when you're in the child part of us when the intensity has been ramped up and something very big and dramatic is going on within us. We need to get back to some type of more moderate adult and nuanced position, which is very challenging. It's okay, it's easy to do in calmer moments. It's when something happens in life that makes it harder to do that. A little crisis of some kinds, a difficulty in some area. It could be work, it could be economics, it could be some part in relationship. That's what throws people off, and they tend to lose their values, somehow get diminished. And that's why I want to get to the next part of this. How do you maintain that valued element, the goals and commitments? And that's when I want to get to the choice point. I've mentioned it before, but I want to go over it again because I think it's such a critical part. Once somebody has a valued idea of where they want to go around health, could be weight loss, diet, exercise, or other things. So I'm going to hold up one more of these.
Yeah, and it sounds like this could apply definitely to relationships where the little kid is saying me, right?
Yes, the me part is part of the child thinking, and that it's not relational also. When you're in your child, when any of us is in the more child part, we're more narcissistic, we're more self-focused, and it's hard to see the needs of others around us. So yes, I mean, a lot of work that I do with clients has to do with being relational, but that has to do with the adult again. Children are not capable of intimacy. And the reason they're not is because they're not developed enough to think about others in a very advanced way. Adults can do that in their best moments. So yeah, the child isn't capable of thinking relationally in the same way as an adult.
Would you say that narcissists are forever children?
Well, let's just say that there's an element of narcissism that has to do with childishness because the child is always and should be, there's a healthy narcissism in young children, and they do see themselves as the center of the universe. And that makes sense because in the family, when they're very young, they are the center of the universe and their needs come first. But the healthy development of children and families means the gradual relinquishing of the sense of centrality, and eventually giving that over and realizing that, gee, I'm just one member of the family, and there's all these other things that have to go on, and they see their place in society and in the classroom and in the peer group. And so the more narcissistic someone is and hasn't resolved some of those early things, the more they can't see others as important as they are. They're very self-centered, and that has a lot of implications for whether they can even do some work on it, because it's very hard to work with someone who's so centrally focused. And their relationships usually suffer, unfortunately. And it's a very hard personality system to work with, depending on where they are on that spectrum. But let me move into this thing about choice points, because I think that's the key, or the tool that I think is most important in the day-to-day work around staying on track, making your commitments work, and following your values to complete your goals. So I'm going to hold this up and I'm going to speak about it. Okay. Tell me what you can see on that. Is that something you can see? Can you read something on there even?
A little bit. I'd say bring it back a little bit toward you and then tilt it down. Yeah, we could see that now. And then continue to turn it maybe to your right. Move it to your right a little bit. There you go. Yep, now we can see it perfectly.
Okay. So many times I work with clients, Nina, and sometimes they feel like they're the victims of circumstance or fate, making them feel helpless, to steer their lives in a new direction. Now, this choice point model can help clients and us recognize those pivotal moments when making a small choice can have a big influence on the trajectory of their lives. And we can use this graphic to help ourselves and clients to raise the awareness and the impact of these choice points. So here, looking at this, each moment can be a choice for how we want to live our lives. We can either move towards or away from our values or who and what matters to us. When life is going well, it's easy to move towards what matters. But when difficult thoughts and feelings show up, they can often hook us and pull us away from these values. Now, these difficulties won't ever go away entirely, but when we learn how to get unhooked from strong thoughts and feelings when they show up, we can move more easily towards what matters. So making a choice to move towards what we value requires a willingness to take a small, active step, even in the presence of difficult thoughts and feelings. We don't have to stay stuck in past patterns. Each situation and moment allows us to make a choice to move towards what matters. And I think that sort of summarizes a lot of what we talked about today, how we can get stuck in different thoughts and feelings. But if we have a strong commitment and our values are right behind that, then throughout the day, let's say with Joseph, when there's a moment that he's feeling lonely, the awareness that he can make a choice right there, whether to move towards what he values or away. It's very simple when you think about it, towards or away. So that model or that tool is something that I think anyone could understand.
Yeah.
Like if he were to start binging when he felt lonely, then he knows that he's moving away from what he values and what he's committed to it, his goals and his commitments. What would moving towards it be? Well, I guess a towards move would be that he does something else constructive at the time when he was about to binge. So he's moving towards what he values instead of away. And that's a very simple but profound model, because it's not easy. And the other things that we talked about are the skills that will help Joseph do that, which is being aware how his thoughts hook him. And when I say hooked, I think, I hope that people will understand that hooked means that you're not just observing your thought, you're in it. And you're not able to float with that thought. You're kind of stuck in it because the thought's carrying you. Like, for instance, I'm a loser. I'll never do anything right. And if you can't observe that thought, then that'll lead Joseph or any one of us right to an away move. Whenever we're moving away, and this is a very important thing, that a formula, we're hooked. We're hooked by a thought or a feeling whenever we're moving away from what we value. So that's an important thing. It's our thoughts, feelings, and sensations that hook us. And when we develop a different relationship with those thoughts and feelings and sensations, then we can unhook and continue moving towards. Whether or not we're feeling, let's say, a low mood that day or anxiety. And I think that's an important thing about this acceptance thing, part of it, because we're never going to get rid of all of our pain in life, as we all know. There'll be disease and there'll be things that happen to us. There'll be things that go wrong in relationships. There'll be deaths, there'll be disease. Now, we're not getting rid of pain, but what we can actually mitigate a certain amount is suffering. And the suffering has to do with when we are feeling anxious, let's say, or feeling a low mood, then we stop moving towards what we value. or we avoid even doing things. And one of the big parts of my work is helping people around what I call experiential avoidance. There's the more people feel high anxiety, very often they do less and they avoid situations that could be pleasurable or enhancing. Let's say someone wants to have a social relationship and they know they have to go to a social activity, sometimes events, but they avoid it. Well, the avoidance is it a towards or away move? Well, obviously it's an away move. So the idea of that it's our relationship with our thoughts and feelings in the present moment. Of course, we have to always think of the present, and that relationship will determine a lot about how we move forward or away from what we truly value.
There's one teacher, and her expression was, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes, that's such a important. That is one of the essences of what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. But even what I do, the acceptance and commitment therapy, is based upon getting comfortable with the uncomfortable or accepting the discomfort and realizing that it actually is a towards move when you're in acceptance. The towards move is that you're building resilience within. As a matter of fact, a lot of work that was done with phobias and people who had fears of what seems like irrational fears of being on an elevator or going across a bridge. Well, it's not the avoidance that works. The avoidance will make it worse. It's the acceptance of the sensations of when you're going across that bridge that builds the resilience and allows someone to overcome not just the problem or the phobia, but to develop a more vital life. So it's bigger than just getting over the symptom. It's actually building a stronger sense of yourself. And it's the essence of the work. So the idea of putting yourself even in situations that may be uncomfortable in the interest of growth is really what a lot of therapy and change is about. But in order to do that, we've got to get back to the mission statement, because it's got to really matter.
Yeah, and no pain, no gain.
Yeah, there's going to be pain in it. And I think that's the myth, that sometimes people believe that they can avoid the pain and still grow. And, there is a certain amount of a discomfort for growth. And that's a lot of work of therapy is encouraging people. But I believe that's tied to values too. Because when somebody values something, they may be willing, and that's an important word, willing to feel the discomfort. Let's say, for someone would be feeling hunger. Well, they're not used to feeling hunger. As soon as they feel hungry, they put something in their mouth. But that's not always going to work. Sometimes if you're working on a certain way of dieting or living, what's wrong with hunger? Or why do you always have to feel a certain way in order to act? Like someone saying, well, I wasn't feeling quite right that day, therefore I didn't exercise. And sometimes I've said, and it's not to be harsh on someone, why did how you felt matter? Because your feelings, well, they change. They're sort of mercurial, but your value didn't change. So unless somebody is, yes, if they're really sick and something's terribly wrong, of course, you're not going to do an exercise routine. But if you're merely feeling a little bit like, well, I didn't feel like it that day, I don't think our feelings are a good gradient or measure of our action, and shouldn't be. So that's the thing about getting hooked by a feeling and thinking, oh, because I'm feeling this way, I probably shouldn't exercise today.
Yeah,
and that won't work.
One of my clients, she says, how do I be like you? How do I be all excited to work out? And I said, I'm rarely excited to go to the gym and lift weights first thing in the morning. I just do it. I know I'll feel better once I do it. And then it's in the morning, it's done. And then I feel great.
Yes, I understand that. And that's because you've done it over time, and you see and you can experience the benefits on a number of levels. But you see, the thing about it is, see the thought that your client is stuck with? It's as if she wants to get to the excitement. A lot of people even will tell me, I just want to be happy. Now that's a trap. It's the happiness trap. Happiness is not a goal. Happiness is a byproduct. It's the byproduct of all this stuff we were talking about today. The willingness to do this, the mission statement, the creating goals and commitments out of your mission, and the willingness to go forward in small steps that moves you towards your goals. And I think that pretty much says it all. I'm sure I know it's easier when I'm just saying it. It's harder in life to do this because things intervene, things go wrong, and how do we stay on course? And I think that's what everything we talked about today is about, staying on course, from the feelings and thoughts to the mission, to breaking it down to goals and commitments. And eventually people can move forward and overcome their stuckness. And that's probably bigger than any one individual goal. It's the idea that, wow, I overcame stuckness in life and I can do that in other areas. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. I mean, I'm working on a new area of therapy. I know you said I've been doing it for 40 years, but my new area is called Focus on Change. And it's a 5-week, it's 5 sessions, 1 a week, program that encompasses a lot of what I've talked about today. And after those 5 sessions and 5 weeks, which includes homework, of course, I believe that people can be set on a course in the areas that you and I just talked about around stuckness. So if those interested can contact me. I work online with it and I do in person. But if anyone's interested, please feel free to contact me. I'll be starting that in a few weeks.
That's wonderful. Great. And by the time this airs, it will probably be available. And I will put the website and the information below. And if you have any questions for me or Lew, write in the comments and maybe we'll answer it right away, or maybe we'll answer it in a future video. So thank you so much, Lew.
Thank you so
much. Add?
No, thank you so much for having me, Nina. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely mine as well.